The sea glass in the bowl shimmered faintly as morning light stretched across my kitchen. I had spent the past hour sorting the pieces by color: blue, green, rare lavender, each shard a tiny trophy of solitude. The silence in the house wasn't hollow anymore. It was full, peaceful, mine. 12 years. That's how long it took me to get here. After clients, contracts, late-night ramen, and more rejection emails than I could count, I had finally bought the house on East Cliff. 2 bedrooms, no lawn to mow, the kind of place where the wind off the ocean did most of the talking. The doorbell startled me, echoing through the stillness. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I saw her, my mother, standing there with a paisley suitcase and that old pressed smile that meant something was off. "Morning, sweetheart," she chirped, stepping in before I even responded. "This light is amazing, so good for migraines." Doctors say natural light helps circulation. She rolled the suitcase into the living room and parked it like it belonged there. I watched her do it, frozen, a part of me hoping this was a mistake. But no, she pulled out a throw blanket, her slipper bag, and a labeled container of soup. "It's just for a few days," she said, patting my shoulder. "The air here's better than the valley, and your sister's therapist says ocean breeze helps with her anxiety too." I didn't ask about Zinnia. I didn't need to. By noon, the fridge had new contents, hers. My photos had been swapped with ones of my parents' wedding and Zinnia at her graduation. A framed picture of me, taken at my first real job, had vanished. I found it in a drawer behind the dish towels. "You didn't ask me if you could stay," I finally said. My voice was level, calm. "You've got a whole house to yourself," she replied. "It's not right." "You know what they say, when you've got more than you need, you build a longer table, not a taller fence." I nodded slowly. "This isn't about generosity, Mom. It's about boundaries." That afternoon, she unpacked completely. Toothbrush, nightgown. She made herself tea using my favorite mug, the one with the tiny crack I never threw out because it reminded me I could still hold things together. Around 6, she called my aunt to check in. I overheard her through the hallway wall. "She'll cave," she whispered. "She always does. This house will be ready for Zinnia by summer." I didn't move. I stood barefoot in the hallway, listening to the waves crash softly beyond the back deck. I had built this space inch by inch to keep the chaos out, and it was already seeping in, wearing my mother's perfume and speaking with my sister's intentions. I didn't respond. Not then, but something in me had already shifted. The version of me who would have stayed quiet had packed her bags the moment that suitcase crossed the threshold. By Sunday afternoon, I was craving normal. A walk along the beach, my usual black coffee, and the kind of quiet that tasted like salt and effort. The waves crashed as they always did, indifferent, dependable. But my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The first message was from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years, then an old neighbor, a past client, all asking the same vague question: "Is this true?" Attached was a link to a video. I didn't want to click it, but I did. Zinnia filled the screen, lit like she'd rented studio lights, face soft with the kind of tears you blink in slowly. Behind her, clips of our family photo albums played, filtered in sepia, melancholic piano music layered over it like syrup. Caption: "I never wanted her house. I just wanted Mom to have a place to rest. I just wanted peace." The video had over 28,000 views. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't scream. I just stood there, watching my life get twisted into a viral soundbite. The internet loves a villain, especially one who stays quiet. I didn't comment. I didn't share. But I opened a folder on my desktop and titled it, "In Case They Come for More." Later that afternoon, a call came in from Martinez Tile. The man on the line was cheerful. "Hi, just confirming the backsplash change for the Barclay Duval remodel?" I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Got an email Friday afternoon. New layout for the dining room. Said to update the open plan concept with a family-style island. It's all under your name." I asked him to forward the emails. The sender, Z. Duval. Gmail address I'd never seen. The language was polished, decisive, like someone who knew exactly what they wanted, if it was someone else's house. I opened the design mock-up, My clean, sunlit layout had been erased and replaced with bench seating and a long rectangular table, 6 chairs, child-height countertops, the kind of space built for chaos and noise. Redesigning a home is the fastest way to rewrite its soul. By evening, the whispers had found their way to the grocery store. A woman by the oranges leaned into another's ear and glanced at me. "That's her," she muttered. "The one who kicked out her own mother." At checkout, a little boy pointed to me. "Mom, that's the house from the sad video." I left the cart behind. Back home, I sat at the edge of my bed. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat. People forget truth. They remember stories, and my silence had just written theirs. I considered releasing a statement. Just a simple note. There's more to the story. But I could already hear the replies. Too little, too late. Nice PR stunt. So instead, I prepared. I cataloged the emails, screenshotted the tile order, saved every comment from the video. I started drafting a timeline of every visit, every document, every manipulation. Because when you can't win a war with words, you win it with facts. Late that night, a notification popped up. Final approval for layout changes due tomorrow. I hovered over reject. Then curiosity got the better of me. I clicked preview. There it was, in the top right corner, family dining concept, Barclay Duval residence. I wasn't just being pushed out of my home, I was being erased from its design. Midweek routines used to soothe me. Familiar places, predictable patterns, small comforts stitched into the chaos of life. But on Wednesday, even the grocery store betrayed me. I was examining tomatoes in the produce section when a voice, low but sharp, cut through the hum of the aisles. "That's her, right? The one who kicked out her mom?" I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I kept my hands steady, but my breath caught just enough to bruise. It's strange how shame sticks to your skin, even when you've done nothing wrong. People don't need facts, just a headline. By the time I made it to the dairy aisle, I'd abandoned my cart. I stepped out into the parking lot and sat in my car, hands gripping the wheel without starting the engine. A notification flashed on my screen, another repost of Zinnia's video, this time by Aunt Lynette in Ohio. Caption: "Some siblings forget where they came from." So sad. Underneath, someone I hadn't heard from in years had commented, "Success isn't worth your soul." And then a voicemail from my cousin. "Hey, just wanted to check in. We saw a few things online. Everything okay over there?" I wanted to scream, but instead I turned off my phone and drove without direction. I ended up at a coffee shop near the park, hoping a walk might wash the noise off me. That's when I heard the voice that made me stop mid-step. "Rowenna!" It was Lacey, Zinnia's daughter, bounding toward me in pink sneakers, her backpack bouncing behind her. She wrapped her arms around my waist like nothing had ever happened. "Hi, sweetie," I said gently. "What are you up to?" "Grandma said we might move here. Mom says this is her house too now," she chirped, eyes bright. My smile froze. I crouched beside her. "And what do you think about that?" She tilted her head. "I think you look sad when people talk about it." There it was. Pure, accidental truth, spoken without agenda. I hugged her tightly, then watched her run back to the swings, completely unaware of the storm brewing just behind her innocence. I walked back to my car, but I didn't drive off. I sat there, watching the other parents, the dogs chasing frisbees, the joggers moving forward without baggage. They weren't just trying to take my home, they were rewriting history in real time, planting new narratives in the youngest minds, until someday the lie would sound more familiar than the truth. This wasn't about property anymore. This was legacy theft, memory manipulation. I opened my laptop that night and began. I pulled every email, every invoice, every inspection report. I scanned the purchase contract, date-stamped and notarized. I started a file. Property truth. The folder wasn't for them. It was for me. To remind myself I wasn't crazy. That my memory hadn't bent under the weight of manipulation. Then I texted Marla. "I think I'm going to need more than boundaries this time." The next morning, I stopped by the Legal Document Center downtown to finalize a few certifications. As I stepped outside with the folder in my hand, I paused. Across the street, parked behind tinted windows, was Zinnia's car. Phone lifted, camera angled toward me. I didn't flinch. I didn't hide. I walked straight toward it, eyes locked. If she wanted footage, I'd give her a front row seat. The invitation came wrapped in civility. My mother's voice, unnaturally sweet over the phone. Zinnia wants peace. Let's just have dinner like a family again. I paused before answering, letting the quiet stretch. Everything about it rang off-key, like a song you recognize but can't name. Still, curiosity won. Fine, I said. One dinner. By Friday evening, I was pulling up outside a beachside Airbnb 10 minutes from my place. The lights were already glowing inside, too warm, too staged. When I walked in, the smell of reheated store-bought lasagna greeted me. Not unpleasant, but definitely not home-cooked. The table was long, candle-lit, far too formal for a casual meal between relatives. Zinnia stood up in a blazer too sharp for dinner, and Leona greeted me like she hadn't trespassed into my life 2 weeks ago. We're just thankful, she said loudly during grace, that the Lord gives us second chances, and daughters willing to forgive. The conversation started harmless. How's work? What's new in town? The weather shifting into spring. Then came the shift. With inflation, housing's become unbearable, Leona said between bites. It's why families need to stay close. Zinnia jumped in. We've looked into schools for Lacey nearby. They have great arts programs. I blinked. You've what? Leona smiled too wide. Just exploring, dear. It'd be wonderful if she had stability, don't you think? And then Zinnia slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside, a proposed co-ownership agreement for my house. You don't have kids, Leona said quietly. You live alone. What's the point of all that space if not to help your family? Zinnia added, voice shaky. I just want my daughter to grow up in one place, to feel safe. You always said that house was your peace, my mother continued. Can't peace be shared? I looked between them. No shame, no hesitation, just calculated guilt cloaked in sentiment. You didn't invite me to dinner, I said calmly. You invited me to sign away my life. I stood up, my chair screeching behind me. You want stability? Build it. Don't hijack mine. I walked out without another word. I didn't cry, I didn't shake, but my knuckles were white as I gripped the steering wheel all the way home. It was dark by then, the coastal wind stronger. I pulled into my driveway, climbed the porch steps, and slid my key into the lock. Nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. My heart beat slower, not faster. This wasn't shock. It was confirmation. I pulled out my phone and called Marla. Before she could answer, a text came in from Zinnia. We thought a smart lock would be more modern. Hope that's okay. Hope that's okay. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the bookshelf, pulled out the folder labeled Contingency, and laid it open across my table. Inside were property records, contracts, time-stamped photos, and saved texts. The paper trail of a woman who knew better than to trust Grace when it came, served with a lasagna tray. You think I stayed quiet because I was scared, I whispered. The wind howled outside, but inside, I was steel. I stayed quiet because I was watching. The train ride home had felt long, but at least it had been quiet. I'd spent the weekend consulting on a coastal project just north of San Luis Obispo, something clean, professional, detached from the personal wildfire waiting back home. By the time I stepped off the platform in Santa Barbara, I was ready for solitude. Or so I thought. My phone screen lit up with security alerts from my home system, 6 motion triggers, all within a few hours. I assumed the wind had kicked up, or a bird had tripped the porch sensor again. Still, I felt a twinge in my chest as I walked to my car. When I got home, the gate was open. That alone made my stomach tighten. I parked in the driveway and sat in the car for a moment before stepping out. The air smelled faintly like barbecue charcoal. Inside, everything seemed in place, until I checked my camera system. The footage started mid-afternoon, balloons, streamers. People I didn't recognize walking through my kitchen with red cups and full plates. Then Zinnia appeared, wearing a tiara, standing behind a cake that read, "Finally Home." She blew out the candles while Leona clapped nearby, proudly holding up a framed photo of Zinnia, Lacey, and herself. My framed diploma was gone, so was the beach photo I took the day I moved in. They didn't just throw a party, they staged a narrative. I leaned back into the chair, eyes locked on the screen. In their minds, they had already taken it all. The house, the identity, the truth. I stood up, walked into the office, and started packing away the flash drive when a folder fell from the shelf. I bent down and opened it, expecting nothing. But inside was an envelope, old and cream-colored, addressed in my father's handwriting. I sat on the floor and read it under the dim lamp. "If you ever feel like this house stops feeling like yours," it said, "remember, you're the one who made it a home. Not them." I don't know how long I sat there holding that letter. My father wasn't perfect, but he had seen me, quietly, completely. By midnight, I had forwarded the surveillance footage to Marla with the subject line, "This just turned legal." I compiled the list: trespassing, unauthorized occupancy, property damage, attempted identity falsification, not as a threat, but as a record. My silence was no longer passive. It was tactical. I used to think dignity was keeping your head down. Turns out, it's keeping your receipts. I changed the security codes, shut off guest access entirely, re-enabled perimeter alerts with audible alarms. Then I printed out a fresh copy of my deed, stamped it personal copy in red ink, and left it on the coffee table. Let them walk in again. Let them see what happens when the woman they mistook for fragile decides to document every breath they steal. If they came back, they wouldn't find a pushover. They'd find a witness. The envelope looked ordinary, one of those thick cream ones you'd expect a thank you card in. But the return address, a law office I recognized from Zinnia's Instagram captions, lunch with family friend and legal brain, set off an alarm in my chest. Inside was a document printed on firm paper, dense with legal phrasing, and highlighted in fluorescent yellow. At the top, intended multi-generational use agreement, Villa Duval. The bolded text in the center claimed that 5 years ago, I had verbally agreed the house would serve as communal family property for the benefit of descendants. My name appeared only once, typed, never signed. Zinnia's name was there, right next to Leona's, their signatures scrawled in aggressive loops. Below them sat a notary stamp, real, the kind of detail that made this more than delusion. It made it dangerous. I didn't react right away. I read it twice, slowly. I let the silence wrap around me like armor. Then I called Marla. She didn't speak for a long time after I explained. "They're weaponizing ambiguity," she finally said. "HOAs, family claims, mailboxes. If you weren't this careful, you'd already be losing." That same afternoon, a letter from the homeowner association arrived addressed to the Barclay Duval household. The name hit me harder than it should have. I went down to the office in person. "Oh, it's standard," the clerk told me. "Secondary occupancy forms can be submitted by family with utility verification. Your mother submitted one last month." I asked to see the form. The name on the line, Zinnia Barclay. The bill used. One in Leona's maiden name, dated decades ago, but tied to the same lot number. Nobody checked deed ownership. Just assumed shared blood meant shared rights. "I thought they were just invading my space," I told Marla later. "They're rewriting it." We opened a new file. Truth Archive. Screenshots, tax forms, time-stamped photos of the villa empty before I moved in. I uploaded everything to 3 cloud backups. I didn't sleep much that week. Wednesday, while organizing my papers, I stumbled across a yellowed notebook from when I was 12. I'd been writing a short story about being invisible. At the corner of one page, scrawled in my mother's handwriting, were the words, "You're the practical one. Zinnia's the one who needs more." I used to think that was a compliment. Now I saw it for what it was, an assignment, unpaid, unending. I didn't build this life so they could reframe it as a monument to their version of family. I didn't work 12-hour days to give Zinnia the backdrop for her brand of chaos. On Thursday, I printed a new sign and taped it to the front gate. "Private residence. Unauthorized access will be prosecuted." Marla gave them 10 business days. After that, we go legal. This wasn't about being the bigger person anymore. It was about being the rightful one. The bank notification hit while I was making tea. At first, I thought it was another phishing scam, until I saw the bank's actual number and the words "fraud alert" blinking on my screen. I called them immediately. "Yes, Ms. Duval," the agent said, scrolling. "We flagged an inquiry tied to a small business loan under the name Rowenna Barclay Duval. Just verifying. Was that you?" My breath caught. No, it wasn't. They emailed me the scanned application within the hour. I opened the attachment on my laptop, and there it was. My name, my old address, even my social security number. The signature at the bottom looked close. Close enough that someone unfamiliar would believe it. But I knew my own loops. And this one didn't belong to me. Zinnia. I hadn't thought of her high school habit of forging Mom's signature on field trip slips in years, but now it wasn't permission to ride the bus. It was a $60,000 line of credit in my name. I stared at the screen, that awful blend of nausea and clarity rising in my gut. "If someone steals your pen," I whispered, "they can still write your name. But they can't sign your story." I called Marla. By that evening, we had a plan. A casual meetup at a coffee shop we knew Zinnia liked. Quiet, charming, close enough to seem unplanned. Marla wore a wired mic beneath her blazer. I played neutral. Zinnia arrived on time. Leona trailed behind her like a shadow with pearls. Small talk came first. Lacey's new art class, the weather, how I looked well-rested, a line I almost laughed at. Then Marla asked casually, "So how are things going on the loan side? I know you're working on something big, right?" Leona waved a hand. "Oh, it's nothing serious. Just some paperwork to help Zinnia get on her feet. Rowenna will bounce back, she always does." Zinnia laughed, too quick. It's not like she was going to use that credit anyway. I clenched my hands under the table. After 20 more minutes of fake smiles and passive jabs, we left. No confrontation, no theatrics, just evidence. Cold, clear evidence. That night, I listened to the recording in my living room. Alone. I heard it all again. The entitlement, the confidence, the complete lack of guilt. And then I thought back to all those accidents from childhood, the birthday money that disappeared, the report card swap, the scholarship that went mysteriously unclaimed. This wasn't a betrayal. This was a pattern. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I printed out the fake inheritance file, fed it into the fireplace, and watched it curl to ash. Then I opened my laptop, wrote a summary email, and attached every document we had. Subject line, "Pattern of deceit," timeline attached. They didn't just use my name, I said aloud. They used the fact that I wouldn't fight back. I closed the laptop. Not anymore. A message from Marla came through a few minutes later. "You ready for next week?" I stared at it for a beat. "Yes," I typed. "But I want everyone in the room when it drops." They wanted an audience for their lies. I'd give them one for the truth. The room was quiet when they walked in. Too quiet. No music, no hors d'oeuvres. Just a long table, water glasses, and the ocean air slipping in through an open window. Leona sat first, smoothing her blouse like she expected to host. Zinnia arrived in a dress too polished for an afternoon chat, eyes scanning the room like she was waiting for applause. The rest of the family, cousins, an aunt, a brother-in-law who never said much, followed with expressions so neutral, I wondered if they knew why they were here. I waited until every seat was filled before speaking. "This isn't a reunion," I said. "This is a reckoning." I didn't waste time. I opened my laptop, clicked play, and let the audio fill the space. Leona's voice crackled first. "She'll bounce back, she always does, but Zinnia needed this. She'll never know what it cost her." Then Zinnia's laugh, hollow and high-pitched. "It's not like she was going to use that loan anyway." No one moved. No one dared. Aunt Margie's eyes went wide. My cousin stared at his lap. Zinnia shifted in her chair, her jaw twitching. Someone stood to leave. I raised a hand. "Sit. You wanted the truth. You're getting it." Then I passed out the documents, one by one. "To Zinnia," I said, "a restraining order. Forging my signature wasn't just a mistake. It's a crime." "To Leona, A cease and desist. Any further contact, and it'll go through court channels. To everyone else, a correction form filed with the HOA. I am the sole owner of this property. Zinnia gasped, her mouth open like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. And this, I added, placing a folded note in the center of the table, is from the only person in this family who ever gave without taking. My father's handwriting, small but steady. If they stop hearing you, speak so clearly they can't pretend you were silent. I looked around. No one moved. Leona's face had drained of color. Her eyes brimmed, but it wasn't grief. It was fury. You'll regret this, she whispered. No, I said. You'll regret assuming silence meant submission. Zinnia shoved her chair back, knocking it over. She stormed toward the door but didn't leave. Not yet. You're selfish, she snapped. You think a deed makes you better than your own blood? No, I replied, but it makes me free from it. I walked them all out, one by one. No yelling, no lectures, just the sound of gravel under their feet. I closed the gate myself and locked it. Inside, I removed my shoes, crossed the living room, and sat on the rug. The breeze from the window caught the edge of my father's letter still resting on the table. I framed it that evening, hung it next to the deed in the entryway. Not because I needed validation, but because that wall had once been filled with other people's images, proof of their presence. Now, it held my truth. At sunset, my phone buzzed. A message from Zinnia. Someday you'll need us. I stared at it, then typed without hesitation. No. I needed you then. You need me now. That's the difference. I hit send. And for the first time in my life, I closed a door and didn't check if they knocked again.